Welcome to Dynamic Blueprints, a game plan for your work plan. To introduce myself, my name is Lujane Altawara. I'm a program associate at the Center for Creative Land Recycling. And before we get started, I'd just like to go over some housekeeping. So this webinar will be recording, and the recording and slides will be available on our website and in a follow-up email within the next week. For the duration of the webinar, please put any questions you have in the Q&A box that is at the bottom of your screen, and any comments that you have in the chat box. There will be a Q&A portion during the last 15 minutes of the webinar, so come prepared with any questions you may have. And I'll also end the poll right now and introduce Joelle, who will be presenting and talking about work plans for EPA Brownfield grants. And then Joelle, if you want to speak a little bit about the poll results as well. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Lujane. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today about work plans. And I'm sure you are all madly getting your drafts done, which are due on Monday. And those that are existing cooperative agreement recipients, hopefully you'll learn some things about work plans and modifications. So the poll, not sure if you guys can see this, but your level of knowledge, we have 37% heard of them, but have never written one, 20% none, welcome, and 37% very familiar. You inherited the 7% who inherited, I'm sorry, but good job, you're here. And which applies to you, a new awardee, 33%, congratulations. Existing grantees, 28%, consultants, 38%, okay. And have you ever written a work plan? 45% of you have said yes, good job. No, 55, all right. Okay, so let's get into this. Thank you for taking the poll. I want to also thank Kathy Stur for joining us. Stewart joining us from the city of Chiloquin. She is a city project manager, and she has agreed, thank you so much, Kathy, to share her experiences. I have the pleasure of working with Kathy on numerous occasions, and total rock star for the city of Chiloquin, who is a rural community in Oregon. So we will be having some facilitated discussion later in the PowerPoint. However, I also have asked Kathy to chime in when she can provide some tidbits of great knowledge from her personal experiences. So without further ado, we will get into work plans, because you're here to learn about that and not just hear me. Okay, all right. Hopefully most of you know my style. I am very interactive and fast-paced, but we'll make sure that we have some fun learning this. Okay, work plans, they are dynamic, right? Okay, so let's start off. You know me, but if you don't know me, hi, I'm Joelle Greenland. I'm a senior planning consultant for the Center for Creative Land Recycling. I'm also the Region 10 technical assistance lead, and I have the pleasure of working with communities in mostly Region 10, but also Region 9. The Center for Creative Land Recycling, hopefully you people, most of you know us, but the Center for Creative Land Recycling is a nonprofit. We are the tab provider for Regions 9 and 10, that's technical assistance to Brownfield communities. And these are some of the free services that CCLAR offers. And as you can see from the map, there are 10 regions. And so we have a lot of participants across the country. So you hopefully know your tab provider, but if you don't, on the US EPA website for technical assistance, I have the link in the PowerPoint. You can find your tab provider. I urge you to reach out to them for any assistance that you may need. And let's get into our agenda. So these are some of the things we're going to get into. We're going to also get into other things, you know, that jump off these things. Okay, so the do's and don'ts, where to start, the consistency, all that stuff. So let's get into this. Okay, we did the poll, so good job. That helps me a lot to understand the audience and the pace, as well as just the information to provide to you guys. Okay, so first and foremost, congratulations to all of you. Not so much the consultants, but congratulations, consultants. But it takes a village, right? Contractors and state agencies, of course, EPA. But congratulations, you have or have just received notice of an EPA award. And so kudos, you've made it here. You are part of a coveted group who have had these grants. I have had several of them, all from Cleanup Assessment, RLF, and they're my favorite grants. So let's get into the work plans themselves. So let's get into the context, okay, for work plans. You have, and when I say you, I'm assuming that the new awardees, you will eventually become cooperative agreement recipients, CARs, okay? But right now, the new awardees are just that, awardees, okay? We'll get into that. But for those who have existing cooperative agreements, you are CARs. And so that makes the first document, if you will, that are really important documents. So like the trifecta of EPA Brownfield grant documents, okay? Cooperative agreement, number one. Number two, terms and conditions. This is a hyperlink. And if you've never read the terms and conditions, I urge you to read the terms and conditions, or at least go through them. This is everything in the kitchen sink, okay? We're talking ASAP, we're talking financial federal forms, we are talking failure to comply with the general T&Cs, right? And refers to your PO, your PM, your project officer, project manager, various things. So if you've never looked through the terms and conditions, please do that. That is the second most important document. And of course, the third one of this three-legged stool, if you will, is the work plan, okay? So putting into context, your work plan is extremely important, okay? So I mentioned the POPM. Throughout this PowerPoint, I'm going to say POPM, but I'm probably just going to say project officer, okay? But depending on your region, sometimes your project officer is called a project officer, and sometimes regions call them project managers, okay? So that's what that reference is. Okay, what is a work plan, Joelle? Well, simply put, it's a document that describes the tasks, right? To implement your grant. Like, what are you doing with our money? Okay, that's what the work plan is. It's essentially a playbook, and it's your playbook, right? You're writing it for EPA, but it's a playbook for you and how you are going to administer the grant or the cooperative agreement, all right? So you've got a bunch of money. Now we want to know how you're going to do it, right? Okay, you're right now new grantees, you're in the application process. You're finishing the application process right now, okay? So essentially it's your playbook, right? Your blueprint. If you can remember that, then you're in good shape. So do you have to do one? Why do you have to do one? You have to do one, okay? You must. This is a must. It's not a encourage or anything like that. You have to do it. In order to receive your cooperative agreement, the money, okay? Your cooperative agreement, you must develop an approved work plan, as well as a budget narrative, and as well as the other forms that you're required to submit to complete your application, okay? So without an approved work plan, you do not have your grant yet, okay? So, and let's just clarify one thing, okay? So grant I'm going to use, right? Technically, you are receiving a cooperative agreement, okay? It's a little different than a grant, but we call them brownfield grants, but technically you are receiving a cooperative agreement, all right? Any questions? Talk to your PO, okay? But you must develop this prior to receiving any funds, okay? Now, same thing, all you grantees out there right now, if you have a work plan and you've deviated from it, okay, you need to modify it. And we'll get into modifications later, because if it's not in your work plan, right, it's really not covered. Okay, you technically should not be drawing down on funds that for activities that are not in an approved work plan. Okay, all right, just want to be very clear about that. So where do you start? I hope, I hope everybody read that really, really, really long email. It's a great email, but it's the really long CVS email, I call it. So it has everything in the kitchen sink. Again, I've said it twice now, but it truly is a wonderful email that you will probably reference throughout your entire grant. Or cooperative agreement, right? It has things like resources, procurement guides, your template for your work plan. Okay. Do you have to use the template? No, you don't have to use the template. However, it's a good idea to start there. Look at the template first. Okay. The template provides invaluable guidance for you to understand what needs to be in a work plan. If you're not going to write or use the template, I urge you to at least read the template and the prompts. Okay, so especially since the work plans are due this Monday. And so hopefully if we were to take another poll and said, how many of the new awardees have a working draft right now that they plan on submitting on Monday, which at least for Region 10, that is the due date for the first draft. Okay, so just make sure you have some type of working draft right now. Okay, so you want to maintain or be on as much of the schedule that was originally in that email. They have a great schedule of like when to expect things, when things are due, when will the grants management office come back and say, hey, you now have a formal agreement, right? And you will get that email eventually, but you need to get all these other things in beforehand and have many discussions with your project officer, which is listed in that email also. Lots of things in that email. So if there's one piece of advice, please read that email. Okay. All right. Consistency. Okay. So consistency is key because the work plan, tasks, and budget must align with your original competitive grant application. Okay. Does it have to be, perfectly in alignment? No. But just don't copy paste, right? And just that's not the work plan. Okay. And when I say multiple revisions can delay or compromise your grant, the grant as far as the award, I'm talking about not between talking with your project officer, but actually you have talked to them and then you get a draft in, and then there need to be revisions because the budget narrative wasn't complete or in enough detail, or even with your project officer, you're just winging it and you're just sending drafts in, but you're really not taking a thoughtful approach because the playbook is essentially for you. Okay. The playbook is that document that I tell everybody, print it out. If that's one document, you're going to print it out and leave it somewhere that you can easily access. Okay. You're going to be referring to it a lot during your grant. You should be referring to it. You want to always be checking in on it to make sure that everything is aligning, especially when you're doing drawdowns or you're getting into cleanup and such, and you want to make sure things are in a line. Kathy?
Yeah, Joel, I just wanted to share that one thing that we've done here in Chiloquin is really use that budget and the tasks and in an Excel spreadsheet so that you can track percentage drawdown. What have your consultants drawn down? What have you drawn down against progress as you're going, so you can really see those issues develop, before they become a problem or you need to ask for for changes. So that budget's really useful if you carefully track percent complete as you draw down and pay those invoices by task, by category. So just a little tidbit there.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic idea. I have worked with somebody that we've actually done that similar Excel spreadsheet or whatever method, right? But it shows you how you're spending down, because God forbid, if you have so much in personnel and that was a travel, or it was for a conference or something, or your travel budget, you think you had more, then all of a sudden you go to check and you only had originally 5,000 in travel, and now you're submitting into ASAP a $6,000 travel expense. They don't align. And so before you can technically draw down funds, you need to modify that budget. And the only way you can do that is to talk to your project officer first before you modify. So, and you do that with both your grants, right, Kathy? I was remiss. You have 2 grants. You have an assessment grant and also a cleanup grant.
Correct. Yeah,
Right. So you have 2 Excel files.
I do. I should have more than that, but yeah.
You probably do.
Yes.
Okay. So remember, I'm going to bring up the rules that you saw originally when you applied, or you someone applied. This language that basically said, and I'm not going to read this, but essentially says that the work plan is a legally binding document, right? And so you have to remember that because it's a legally binding document, that the information that you provided in your grant, right, it was a competitive process, the essence, the spirit, the purpose, those deliverables, the outputs, the outcomes, those things still need to be in the work plan. And if they've changed significantly, or if they've changed in some way, then you need to be talking to your project officer manager to discuss those changes so that the work plan is basically in alignment. Okay. All right. So.
Hey, Joelle, one thing on
Yeah.
that I know you and I have had a discussion on is that because that narrative in your application gets, and the budget numbers and all that gets translated into your work plan, one thing we didn't know enough about when we started all of this was how critical that application is and how well thought out it needs to be. And if you have a consultant helping you at that point, they can't help you later. So you need to have a really good understanding of the tasks and the budget. And the more you can do that at the grant application level, the better off you're going to be as you translate that information into your work plan.
Absolutely. Yeah. We've discussed this a lot, where the work plan doesn't start when you get that email, right? That long email that says, hey, congratulations. The work plan didn't start there. The work plan started when you were writing the grant, right? Where your consultant was writing the grant. And you bring up a really great point, which I probably need to make again and again and again, which is, yes. So any contractor, consultant, right, who wants to bid on the work can absolutely not. They are barred from working or suggesting or helping you in any way, shape, or form with the work plan. Okay. If they do not plan on bidding on any of the work, then they are more than welcome to help you with your work plan. Okay. Great point. Yes, it does start with the grant, which is why that instruction before is in the instructions to let you know that the narrative information, what you're giving here, is going to end up in your work plan. Okay. So we talked about this, new awardees versus existing cars. New awardees, you know who you are. I think it was 33%, but you have received that email, but you are not a car yet, a cooperative agreement recipient. Okay. And when you do your reporting in acres, everyone except multipurpose, eventually, you're known as a car. Okay. So if you see that language, that's what that is. Okay. Oh, and we're going in the wrong direction. Okay. So You will be a car. We're hopeful. You have enough people and support around you that you'll definitely become a car. Okay. All right. So typical components, right? So if you go into your template, right? Hopefully that's not an if, when. Let's be positive. When you go into your template, which was attached to your long email, right? Your awardee email, right? The structure or the components are typically this, okay? And so this is what you need to cover. And if you're in different regions, this I took from region 10. So make sure each one of those could be different, but make sure you're reading your templates. But anyway, these are the components. They should look similar, right, to some of the things that you had in your grant, especially the tasks, right? This is just, these task descriptions are just examples. You may have 5 tasks, you may have 3 tasks, you probably have different tasks. Most of you should have project management tasks, right? And community engagement. So that's that. Okay, so let's just talk about the templates, all right? The guidance in the templates is top notch, okay? So everything in the templates, again, region 10 example, blue writing, okay? So when you open your template, this would be the cover page on the left here, right? And this is a suggested work plan, and it's in blue so that you realize that they're giving you suggestions. They're giving you prompts, right? And guidance. So for instance, under project task descriptions, they provide you with this prompt right before. And so what I do if I'm working with folks, I just say, leave the blue in, okay? And then start a new document, right? Save it as your own and start writing underneath the blue and make sure that what you're writing is, you know, addressing the points that they're asking for, right? Now, if you want to just copy paste from your grant and throw it into the different sections, knowing that you're going to go back and massage it a little and translate it into your own how and what, right? The why was the grant application, right? This is the how and what stuff, okay? So the prompts are great. So even if you don't want to use the template, look at the prompts in the templates, okay? So provide a schedule of key milestones, activities, accomplishments. They even tell you, for example, a 3-year project could be referenced with 36 months, right? My one tip is this: when you go into the deliverables and there's a big chart and you're saying quarterly reporting, you could say quarterly reporting will be done every quarter through the, you know, throughout the duration of the grant. Sometimes those quarterly reports, you'll have some hiccups and you won't, if you put them at, you know, I'm just going to make up these numbers, right? Month 4, month, you know, 7, month, whatever, right? If you have all those different months and let's just say you need an extension, now you're going to be off those months. Okay. So quarterly reports, annual reports, you can say throughout the entire, talk to your project officer, but that's sometimes a good way to just, you know, put them all together and not have to call out what month you're actually going to get it done. All righty. Okay. So budget. So this is the budget table and it's very different from the budget narrative. Okay. So the budget, this budget should be very, very close to the one that you provided in your grant. Okay. If there are differences, I strongly encourage you to talk to your project officer about any changes to your budget. All right. Is it possible? Yes. Is it, you know, can it be changed? Again, I'm not going to say yes or no. Talk to your project officer or manager. Okay. This is the budget development guidance. It's a very good guide. Highly encourage you to check out that resource. Hey, Kathy. I was just going to
I'm
ask
here.
her.
I'm here. Sorry.
Well, it's always delayed on these things.
Yeah.
Do you ever change your budgets, like from your grant to like your budget table and everything, have you ever been in you have a cleanup grant. So is
Yeah.
there ever a difference, you know, when you have your APGA, right? Your analysis to Brownfields cleanup alternatives, right? So for anybody who has a cleanup grant and you're like, Joelle, yeah, things kind of changed from in a year or so. Did that ever change? And did you have, what was your experience? Were there big changes or they're pretty similar, or we're going to get to that?
Yeah, we're sort of in a little bit in the middle of that. On the assessment grant, we haven't had to change anything in a big way. So that's been okay. On the cleanup grant, you know, there's nothing like a cleanup grant. You get into it is when you find out that things change, right? No better way to find a change than to begin cleanup. So we're sort of in the process of doing that right now.
Okay.
Luckily, we haven't had to change big things between categories of work. And so we're able to stay within what we need to do. But working with our project officers on that has been great. You know, and just keeping that communication going and understanding. You and I have had the conversation recently that, you know, I guess I didn't really realize how things do change and that it's okay. You can work with your project officer and you can figure it out, and there are paths forward that are, you know, when it comes down to it, relatively easy to do. You know,
The path is definitely easier if you have the conversation as soon as possible. If you delay that conversation and say, oops, we've realized that we've been going on a tangent, it's not in our work plan, and we've already spent money.
yeah.
And that is definitely a bigger conversation. So, okay.
Yes, we've been
Just
able to
curious.
avoid that, you know, using the Excel spreadsheets we were talking about before too. You know where you are, and then when you get a
Right.
big change, you know where you have to go. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you. Budget narrative. I mean, the budget narrative is probably one of the biggest questions that I get as a technical provider. You know, so the budget narrative, the key here is the budget narrative is details, right? So it's all in the details. The budget narrative, again, if you were successful, you've probably already did this, okay? So you want to take it out of those charts and you want to put it into the budget narrative, right? You know, the tables in the grant application where it said lead, description, outputs, outcomes, right? That, and you really broke it down. This is where that's going to help you. So you're going to take that and you're going to expand. But as you can see, this is one that I took from a very good work plan, and they broke it out. And even the regional conferences, you know, how many people are going, a rough estimate of the hotel. Now, if the hotel is $20 more, and this is not exact, right? Okay, we're not gonna kill ourselves, okay? But it's gonna be as close as possible, right? You're not gonna say the hotel is $600 a night. I mean, you could, but you probably won't get reimbursed. But and hopefully you don't get audited. So they've really broken this down, and this goes to when you're setting up, this will help you, right? Just what Kathy was saying with the budget and the tasks, right? And following that budget, you can even break it down further into your categories here if you want to really keep track of that. And to also say, oh, wow, we didn't even need this. See at the bottom here, the 11,318 for contractual. We took that on ourselves. So actually we have that, and we could put that into contractual for, I don't know, reuse planning or something, right? If it didn't get done. So it's not just details or driving people crazy, right? That's not it. Okay. The details are such that it helps you keep track of the money as well. Also, the bottom line is it's still taxpayer money. It's still federal assistance, and they want to know where the money's going. Okay. Especially supplies. Big caveat here with supplies. Okay. Big note. Supplies, you have broken this down, and supplies can't just be office supplies, right? They want you to break it down. Are you talking about a new computer? Do you need a new laptop? Do you need a mouse? Do you need, I've seen them where they come down to mouse, stapler, files. If you say we need lots and lots of paper, I urge you to go to the Paper Reduction Act, which is a cross-cutting federal authority. If you don't know about the Paper Reduction Act, please be familiar with it or talk to your project officer or project manager about it. So you shouldn't be using reams and reams and reams of paper. The other thing is supplies. If you're putting down hazmat suits and boots and this and that, and for the contractors have their own supplies, and that is in contractual. These are supplies for you, the grantee, okay, to administer this grant. All right, so it's two different things. All right, enough on budget. Submitting the work plan. Okay, so submitting your draft work plan, you hopefully have had conversations with your project officer, project manager. They're submitted electronically in Word format so that you can do track changes. Okay, so the project officer gets it and they can do some, if there's any modifications, or they're like, hey, you'll need to put a revision date. If it's going back and forth, you want to make sure all those revision dates are on the front page. Okay, and then when it's finalized, it'll say final work plan. It'll have a date when it's been finalized, and then that will go to the project officer, will then send that along to the grants office to, for final approval. All right, so keeping track of those dates is important. But you want to send this in Microsoft, not PDF, right? So that you can do those track changes. It'll come back and forth to you, right? And then make sure you correctly identify it, make it clear. And these are examples from Region 10 as far as how you would name the file, especially when you're emailing in the subject line so that your project officer sees, oh, it's a work plan. You guys are on a tight deadline to get this done, okay? The first draft is due this Monday, at least in Region 10, okay? And then you have some time. There's the schedule in that email, the long email. Hopefully they all get done. Here's the key. By hopefully in July, so that grants office has enough time to get these all wrapped up, and that your grant or your cooperative agreement can start October 1st. Okay, that's the goal. All right. Modifications. All right. So everybody who's now already an existing grantee, pay attention. This is your time. Okay, modifications. Kathy and I talk about modifications. We talked a lot about our stories together when we were preparing for this webinar, and modifications are essential. I mean, they are key to a informative and effective work plan. Okay, if you've never done a modification, then I urge you to read your work plan and see if things are still applicable, relevant, and aligned with the essence of, your grant and what you are doing on the ground. Okay. If you said, for instance, say you're in your last year and you said you were going to have community meetings twice a year through the lifetime of the grant, and you realize that you've only had 2, okay? That's an issue, right? Now, there could be very good reasons why you didn't have all those community meetings. You had all the good intentions to do them. It's fine, okay? Discuss with your PO, modify your work plan such that you now have the correct deliverables or actions that you have done so that they align with this last bullet. Gotten a little ahead of myself, but it just lends itself right now. It aligns to the closeout report. One of the things you don't want to do is never review your work plan, and then you are right now in June, right? Okay. Or you're in August. and you realized that you needed to do a modification to your work plan because there are a lot of things you actually didn't do. Gee, you said you were going to do 15 phase ones, but you actually only did 10. You said you were going to do 3 phase 2 or 2 work cleanup plans or, 2 APGAs, right? But you only did 1. And you had good reasons. You had a great site. Oh my gosh, you found a developer. It's going to go into vertical development. It's great. It's housing. It's fine. Talk to your project officer right away, because when you do your closeout report, they need to align. Okay. And if they don't align, there's going to have to be some explaining. Okay. So take a look at them, see if they align, and then figure out the next steps. Okay. So there are administrative approvals. A lot of things can be administratively approved by your project officer, project manager. Okay. So that's why I keep saying, like a broken record, have a discussion with your project officer, project manager. They're there to assist you to make sure that this document is really, truly a playbook that works for you and, tells the true story of what you're doing with the money. Okay. Budget modifications. Here's the rule, okay? But there's other things, okay? So again, another discussion. 10% cumulative total funded amount and movement. Is movement allowed between budget categories? Yes. But how much movement? There are rules, okay? So discuss with your project officer. Kathy, any pointers or any tidbits on modifications?
No, I would say that, it does happen, especially in the assessment when, you're sort of guessing at how many phase 1s and phase 2s you might do and things might change. And then also, especially, I guess, too, in the cleanup grant. In ours, we decided to completely delete a task related to the abatement of lead-based paint because we're going to take the building down instead of saving it. And so those they can happen, do happen, and follow the rules. Yeah.
Great.
But
Okay.
you and I have talked. It was something that I learned through this process. I really thought it was really rigid, and I was worried about how are we going to do it within these constraints, and they're not really constraints. Like you say, it's a playbook, and there are audibles, I guess, and so that was
Right.
good to know. Yeah.
I know that when I was doing one of my first grants, I think I got to that point where it was like, oh my gosh, I was supposed to I could make changes to this. So way back when, so it absolutely is okay to have them. And honestly, there should be a modification, at least one modification, because no one has a crystal ball. And as we all know, brownfields can be moving targets, right? Especially with cleanup. So you never know, but it's definitely a dynamic document that should be working for you. Okay, so we've talked about this kind of ad nauseum, but for work plans to be effective, right? They need to be a playbook, a guide, right? They're not static. They're evolving, right? You should be very familiar. If anything, this is the document that you're most familiar with. When somebody comes to me and they say, I need some assistance, they talk about things, I say, would you mind sharing me your work plan? Okay. So the first thing I do is I review their work plan. I've seen their grant. I've downloaded all the grants. Okay. And grant proposals, I got them. The world has them, right? Okay. But that doesn't tell me what you agreed to in your work plan. Okay. So I ask for your work plan and then I read through and I go, okay, that's what they're trying to do. And then I look at your schedule. Your schedule tells me your timeline. So if you're 2 years in, I'm going to look at your schedule of deliverables and I'm going to go down and I'm going to cross, I'm going to take a line, a marker, and I'm going to go right across to where you are supposed to be in your deliverables. And I'm going to go back up. And when we have our call, I'm going to say, did you do your community involvement plan? Have you had 3 community meetings? Have you, completed you know, how many phase ones, if it's assessment, if cleanup, you know, have you, you know, whatever it is, right? I'm doing a mini audit, okay? And then we're going to discuss, okay, you have a year left. The activities that are below that line, is it feasible? Is it doable? Right? Depending on where you are, Alaska is very different from, say, New Jersey, right? As far as weather, window of time to get things done, right? So your deliverables are going to be very different, the schedules. So make sure that even if you're looking at somebody else's, your deliverable time schedule is going to be very tailored to your, you know, your needs and what you said you were going to do with the grant money. Kathy?
Yeah, you know, another thing here is that your work plan and the budget narrative and the numbers should also help you write scope for your QEP if you're using a contractor, and those should match, and that's how you should be tracking the work that they're doing, and that should be translated into your contracts with them as very clear what they're doing, what it's going to cost, and then that all comes together in your Excel spreadsheet that you track. So there should be a real strong correlation there, and your work plan should lead you very clearly towards that work that your contractor's going to be doing for you.
Absolutely. Excellent point. You know, all these documents are very interdependent, you know, on one another. And so, you know, they're chains that come together, you know, links, if you will. And if you have them aligned, they're going to be a really strong bond, right? And you're going to have a very, I believe, a successful grant, and that sets you up for the next grant, right? The next cooperative agreement that leads you, you know, to say, look, we hit our metrics, and it's because we had a really great playbook, our work plan. We said we set this out, but then we also knew how to change it and to make it effective and also true to what we were doing. But we didn't fluff, you know, we didn't make anything up or anything like that. We told the story, we followed the story, and we had our contractor know. In fact, let's talk about that with work plans and contractors. I know this is in a slide somewhere, but it's probably in the don'ts, but we'll hold off. Just remind me, Kathy, about contractors and work plans. And I'm probably going to forget this, but I'm not. I'm going to hopefully remember this. Okay. So do these things. All right. I've talked this over and over and over. Read the template, just read the guides. They're fantastic. Okay. Work on the draft ASAP. Those are for the new awardees, right? Share drafts in Word. Refer often, right? It's your manual, it's your playbook. Discuss any modifications. Anybody out there, right, that already has a work plan, look through. Submit key contacts form. Okay. Hopefully, if we did a poll right now, everybody knows what a key contact form is. If not, hyperlink here, click it. I would, but technically, we're doing well with this PowerPoint. I could click to it. It's essentially a form, right? An EPA OMB form that basically says changes that happen with your administrative contact, your authorized representative, your project manager, right? If those people change, shocker, I'm sure almost everyone has had changes in their staff, right? If you do, and those people were named in your work plan, talk to your project officer, because those names, the modifications to your work plan, informal, right? It's informal, but need to be known, changed, and also the form has to be submitted to EPA with the new name. This is a must. This is a has to. Okay. Whenever I hear somebody go, oh, been great working with you, and I'm moving on to, you know, such and such, I go, hey, wait, good luck. Also, here's the key contacts form. Make sure that the new person that the city hires, this form needs to be, you know, filled out and submitted to the project officer. Okay. All right. If anybody has any questions about that one, talk to their project officer. Okay, or a manager. All right, reach out to the tab providers for, if needed. Know that. That's a do. Okay, let's talk about the don'ts. I always like to start on the positive, right? But don't procrastinate. Don't copy paste, just copy paste from your grant, your application. But we've talked about that, how to meld those, right? And to translate them, essentially. If you need assistance and you're really struggling, talk to your project officer, talk to your tab provider. We're more than happy to assist, but your first discussion really should be with your project officer. But if you really are struggling, please ask, okay? So don't use a consultant, a contractor. We've talked about this. You guys are great out there, but sorry, you cannot help with the work plan if you intend to bid, okay? Don't even provide, here an example from such and such city. No, nothing, stay out of it. If you get a request, hey, we have a work plan, just say, sorry, cannot provide any guidance, right? Okay, I know it's tough love, but truly stay within the confines or the swim lanes, okay? The only way that you can is if you don't intend to bid, right? All right, so don't stray away from the work plan. Okay, if you do, that's a modification. And you want to make sure that what you're straying to is allowed. All right, if it's not in the essence or the spirit or what you said in the competitive grant application, that is going to be a different conversation with your project officer, okay? So don't modify work plan at all, okay, without prior approval from your project officer, including the budget, even if it's slight, right? You have to talk to them, and then you have a revision date, all right, on that work plan. Let's talk about this. I've seen this. Do not attach the work plan to the RFP, RFQ, okay? Don't attach into your solicitations, right? That is just phoning it in. And if a consultant asks you for the copy of your work plan, I strongly discourage you in providing it. And if they say, hey, look, we want to know exactly what you can say in the solicitation, just what Kathy had said, right? What you put in your work plan, right, will guide you as far as, hey, we're looking for a contractor, right, or a firm to help us with community engagement, with environmental site assessments. We anticipate doing a dozen phase ones, 2 cleanup plans. You can get prescriptive that way. You can do that. That's absolutely fine. I've been in the private sector. I would like to know what exactly I need to bid on, right? You can get prescriptive that way. But just attaching the work plan and saying, see work plan for, detailed deliverables, right? You need to translate that, okay? The other thing is this. If the work plan is coming directly, if you're just copy pasted, right? And there are parts of that have been copy pasted, especially the budget, right? It could be seen as, and if you had somebody help you with the grant, that could also translate as, a bias to the contractor that helped you write the grant because it's now in the work plan and you've attached the work plan to the solicitation, okay? So it's just not good practice to do it. All right, enough of that. I'm not going to harp on that anymore. All right, so Kathy. All right, everyone. Look at this great work that Kathy's done. I love your fact sheet, by the way. If anybody wants an example of a fact sheet, this is a beautiful one. So, Kathy, I was floored when I learned the population of Chiloquin, which just tells me it's the little engine that could, man. 770 population, the little engine could, that has received 2 grants. Great job. And how long have you been a city project manager with Chiloquin? How long have you been doing this? Isn't it like?
I've been for the city, just since we got the assessment grant. But I had a 20-year career in environmental assessment, cleanup, haz waste stuff, brack closure, that kind of thing, way back
Right.
when. And then I
Right.
retired and moved here to Chiloquin, and just sort of fell into the city had this need and this opportunity, and here we are. So yeah.
And not only EPA grants, but also community building block grant recently. So congrats on that too. And the community change that you've been also going after. And so, in talking about, we were talking about this before about the realities. Let's talk about this, right? The realities. And Lujane, if anybody has popped questions in, if you want to let us know about that, we can start taking those too. But Kathy, I wanted to talk about also you yourself, okay? 2 grants, and one of them is 2021, which means you're getting close to closeout, right?
We are. Yeah. In fact, had a conversation with our consultant this morning, asking them to, really go back and audit the original work plan and what we've really been able to accomplish. And so that we can, like you've been suggesting, make sure that matches. And our goal is to do that in the next quarterly report. So that's all done and approved in a real official way. So yeah, I don't think we did as many site assessments as we thought we would. And honestly, our cleanup grant came right upon the heels of the award of the assessment grant. And they sort of integrated, and we worked between the two with the 2 project officers and did some creative things. And so we've got to sort that out. But yeah, our intention is to do that now, so it's not last minute.
And that's great. And so, people are like, well, when can I give the work plan? Well, when you select a QEP or whatever contractor, right? Maybe you hired a specialty firm for community engagement, right? Feel free to share the work plan at that time, right? In fact, you can attach it to the contract, right? If you want, say attachment, these are the deliverables that we're thinking of, the scope of work when you get to that point, right? So
Yep.
I love the audit because, as I was talking about before, you want to make sure your work plan aligns prior to your closeout. And most grants close September 30th, and then they have 90 days to do final closeout reports, any last drawdowns. Of course, you can't do any work as far as any expenses have to be incurred prior to September 30th. So it's what made you say, I should probably look at my work plan. I probably need to talk to my my contractor and say, we're getting close to closeout. What have we done? What haven't we done? And from your point of view too, because your grant, but it's also good to get as far as also saying, what can we get done in the next few months too, before the grant closes realistically? Have we missed anything? And do I need to, have different explanations in here?
Yeah. And do I have money in the right pots to pay for that? So yeah, yeah.
That's exactly
Same
it.
thing.
That's exactly it. The budget definitely comes into play. So, so you wrote out some pointers here from your perspective. Do you want to talk about any of those?
Sure.
Or?
And in fact, I saw a question, I think, in the chat, and you just mentioned this, and this is part of my thought about some of the processes is not ideal, and not to be critical of the process, but just that this whole issue of if somebody helped you with your grant, they can't help with a work plan, and you don't want us to attach the work plan to the procurement documents. But in my mind, that almost makes it unfair. If you did have a consultant help with your grant application, they have that inside knowledge because you are translating tasks and budgets to, and so that's some of the frustration. And I think maybe there's still a big gray area around that, as evidenced by, my questioning that, and a question came up, I think, in the chat on that. So maybe understanding more of that logic would help. But and there's a huge learning curve, especially for these small cities. At Chilicon, we have a city staff of 4. And so whether it's contracts or budgeting or preparing a work plan, or, if you don't have somebody like me on it in a small town knowing anything about the environmental work, is difficult. So I think a key thing is to, like we've talked about, ask for help. Your project officer, or again, like you've been saying, our tab providers. So my other thoughts we've talked about a little bit. Things can feel restrictive, but again, they're really flexible. Things change. That's okay. Refer to your work plan often. Document changes. I think in our case, we've done a good job of documenting changes in communication with our project officer as we've gone along. Have we officially changed the work plan every time there was a little movement? Honestly, no. Should we have? Yes. Will we before we close out? Yes. So there's a little wiggle room there. And then again, I guess just the learning curve is steep. But it's all been a great experience. And boy, I mean, I can't tell you what the assessment grant, the cleanup grant, and hopefully the change grant will do for little teeny tiny Chiloquin that really deserves an opportunity to do something like this. The way it's all come together, the way it's aligned. We've had to go look for funding in other places. We've been able to do that, which, I mean, everyone loves the opportunity to leverage state funds, federal funds, private funding funds together to do something like this. And so we've been very fortunate there to be able to do that. And it all started right here with the EPA assessment and the closeout grant and the support we've gotten from everybody. Yeah.
And you've talked about leveraging funds, and that's the other thing. If you've got a really well honed work plan and budget, right? And you have a windfall or some other grant comes through, or, beneficiary or whatever, and they say, just give me something, carve something out for us, that you do, then that helps inform that as well, to say, oh, well, we didn't think, now if we have this money, we can now use it towards this, and then move this money. We can do more contractual work. We can do more ESAs, or we can do more testing, more, getting data gaps answered, or refining the APGA, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I think, that's just another, plug for work plans, is having them as meaningful and thoughtful as possible. And it's, I get it. The first draft, it's kind of like that first draft of a novel. Is it going to be good? Probably not. But get a draft in as early as possible, so that you can start having those conversations with the project officer. And if you need, we have a great relationship with R9 and R10, and when they need assistance, they'll get us involved. If people just, reach out to us, we'll help out. But we'll always direct them, again, to have conversations with their project officer, because you want to have that relation. It's a long time, 4 or 5 years, these grants. You want to have that relationship where you can just call up and say, got a problem. But I understand where, some entities, it's like, well, I don't want to call because I don't want to sound like I don't know what I'm doing, right? It's okay. You're a new awardee, or people, even if you've had an award before, maybe you came in, maybe you took over a grant, right? And you didn't start from the beginning, so you didn't know the work plan or anything. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to, I love when you said things change. That's okay. if brownfield projects don't change, I want to see that project. Like, what brownfield project does not change? So, and I love that, you know, being flexible, and that, you know, I know at least with me, you want to make, and guys, if you have more questions about the work plan and attaching to it and the procurement and stuff, check out the procurement webinars back in January. It's a two-parter. Don't want to get too much into procurement because it's a bigger subject, but you want to make sure that it's free and open, like it's freely and open competition, right? So if somebody, you know, that work plan, when you attach it, right? I know you're saying, oh, well, then everybody knows it. But anybody who helped with your grant also knows it even better. Okay. So you want to just make sure that, and also if you make it too prescriptive, you don't leave contractors who are trying to get into the market, or just contractors in general, who want to spread their wings on methodologies and say, well, we wanted to say, maybe you could do this, but your work plan says you have to do it this way. Or again, work plans are supposed to be dynamic, right? So you don't want to be so rigid in your solicitation, like this is the work, right? It may modify. And if that modifies, right? And that's what you put out there, that was, you know, that gets a little murky. Okay. So just kind of think it through. If you have questions, let me know, or talk to your project officer.
Just real quick on the same note, when this building you see here in the top photo, we decided last minute to take the building down before doing the remediation because it's just unstable, and the work is underground and you can't get equipment in there. That's where we had to come up with the private and state funding quickly to do that. And our EPA work plan helped there because we kept the EPA money within the work plan and used this other money to do the other things, and the lead soil contamination we didn't know was there, but that work plan really helped us keep those, and it's going to help us as we do the work keep everything separate. So yes, it can modify, but sometimes it also helps you just keep it right there and clear and not modify it. Yeah.
Clear divisions, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we're on our last slide. Well, you know this slide. Hopefully everybody knows how to contact see Claire in the newsletter. But here are your takeaways, and then we're going to get into, we've got some time for questions and stuff, but we've gone over this, right? So I think a lot of these have been said over and over and over again, but the biggest one is conversation with your project server. Please read that the long CVS email, EPA email, and also discuss modifications, any modifications, or just have a conversation with your POPM that says, do I need modifications? Do I, like, I'm not really sure about this. Just have a dialogue. Okay. When in doubt, ask. All right. So you got through it. Now go write.
Great.
Or
Yeah.
finalize, hopefully.
Thank you so much, Kathy and Joelle, for providing your own insight and expertise regarding work plans. So we have a lot of great questions that came in. And I know we kind of talked a bit about when a consultant can get involved in a work plan, when they cannot. Like Joelle mentioned, I did put the procurement resources in the chat, and Terry has also provided some great insight and resources as well. Thank you, Terry. So the next question is, can you clarify the term contractor versus consultant? EPA considers them very different, and that clarification language would be helpful.
Oh man, if Jim Drummond was on the phone, and I'm sure Terry Griffith is laughing right now. Yeah, I'm not touching that. That is a legal question. So from my own personal, and I'm going to caveat that, I'm going to preface this with, I'm not an attorney. I don't play one on TV. How did I know this was a Richard question? Okay, here we go. Ready? I'm a consultant. This is the easiest way I know how to do it, okay? I'm a consultant, right? I'm an independent contractor, okay? So I have a contract with CClear, okay? So when you're a contractor, you have a contract. The word's right in there, right? Now, EPA has their definitions and their lingo. When you go into, I know that when we get into RFP language and stuff, you should be using the word contractor. Okay. So Terry, I know you're on here. If you want to answer that, feel free. And I want to have 2 shout outs. Terry Griffith, Region 10, and also Lisa Honusiak from Region 9. Thank you so much for your input with this webinar. Terry is a rock star when it comes to assisting and providing me with her awesome knowledge and guidance. So Terry, do you want to say something about that question about consultants and contractors before I get a call from Jim Drummond? I think she's trying.
Yeah, Terry, you're able to chat.
I think, can you hear me?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Hey, Joelle. Hey, everyone. So did you want to talk about the consultant versus contractor question? That's my favorite question, but
Yes, absolutely. And I deferred to you because I said that is, I'm sure EPA has definitions and they're probably legal. And I always defer to EPA when there is a legal question. Or
okay, I don't thanks. I don't have my notes in front of me, but it was too fast. It is defined in our work plan template, the actual 2 things that we talk about. But when we're talking about a competitively bid contract, say for qualified environmental professional services, we are talking about a contractor, as I think you've already said. A consultant there's a consultant cost cap. If it's an independent consultant that you're directing as an employee, but if you have a scope of work RFP, that's a contractor. So we always tell our grant recipients, our grant applicants, please just use the word contractor rather than consultant, because when our grants office sees the word consultant, they're thinking of the cost cap. And I think it's defined in 2 CFR part 1500. We talk about that. That's the part of the CFR that's specific to EPA. So we have the uniform grant guidance at 2 CFR part 200. And then we also have the EPA additions at 2 CFR part 1500.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Terry, for that clarification. And then while we still have you here, I think both you and Joelle can potentially provide answers for this question. But Chris asks, does the EPA provide any guidance for the recipients on how to issue RFPs for the assessment or cleanup work? Joelle?
See the webinars.
See the procurement webinars.
See the procurement webinars.
I think also if they are within our regions, CClear would be happy to review the RFP to ensure it makes sense as well. Terry, would you like to add anything?
Yes, thanks. I can't say enough good things about the support that CClear gives on procurement. I think the procurement, the 2-part webinar is fantastic. EPA also has 2 documents, the best practices guide, and I think we popped them in the chat or the Q&A earlier. And then the Brownfields program has the Brownfields, it's like a fact sheet on procurement under EPA Brownfields grants that has some great tips on things to do and not to do. And also, if you're putting together an RFP, feel free to reach out to your EPA project manager and we can review it for you. We're not experts on those, but we can also reach out to our headquarters office and to our Office of General Counsel that can provide some also some support for that. And then Joelle has does a finely tuned detailed review and can make some recommendations about RFQs, requests for qualifications versus requests for proposals and so forth. So reach out to Joelle, talk with your EPA project manager, and we can help support you in that effort to find your consultant or your contractor, I should say, and put together an RFP, and while making sure that you're meeting all of our requirements. One of the big things to watch out for is that you cannot you don't want to have a contractor write your RFP and then bid on it. That's a no-no, and actually a violation, because it gives an unfair competitive advantage. And there are other things to watch out for. So yeah, please reach out and we can talk more.
Great. Thank you so much, Terry.
I just wanted to add, Joelle, that for those who haven't put in their grant applications yet, procurement is costly. And so make sure you account for how much it's going to cost for your entity to put those documents together and oversee them and oversee the process. It's amazing how much it costs and the time involved in procurement to do it right, especially if you're on that steep learning curve. So yeah, just want to point that out.
Absolutely. Yep. It's never too late to start. We're already thinking about Mark FY25, or I guess it's Mac. I don't know, whatever year it is. But yeah, so thank you so much for everyone's, I love making interactive webinars, and thank you so much, Claire, for supporting all these wonderful trainings and workshops. Lujane is always the rock star, always. She makes things look seamless, but I can't do it without her. So thank you, Lujane and Terry and Kathy, so much. I'm Region 9 and 10 that I support. So reach out to your tab providers. I recently met Jim Byrne from Region 1, super rock star, Sue Klein for procurement and stuff. So reach out to your regional folks at Brownfields providers, and they are super with what they do, and can't thank you enough. So thanks, everyone. Good luck. Get your work plans in. And for those that you have, read your work plans, and I'm sure you will find some things that you want to tweak. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you, everyone. And please be sure to fill out the evaluation survey that will pop up after. If we didn't get to your question, I have them saved, and we'll be able to provide some answers after the webinar as well. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.